Guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and hang out with me. Today's going to be fun. I'll give you a little rundown of how this is going to work. I have envelopes here. In these envelopes is a dealership scenario. And within that scenario, we're going to create a handful of strategies to help them either overcome whatever that scenario is or meet a goal objective that maybe is in that scenario. You guys will get 5 minutes after you've opened your envelope to kind of strategize among yourselves. Then as a table, as a strategy team, strategy mob, we're going to get together and discuss that. So Everold, here is yours, John. Senor Jeff, Mr. Marco.
Thank you. I'm used to having money in these usually.
Yeah, they put it on the fancy paper. Look at that. Look at that. All right, guys, here we go. ABC Motors again. Man, ABC Motors, it's tough. ABC Motors typically sells 65% trucks, but due to lack of inventory, they have to focus on increasing SUV sales. Unfortunately, their SUVs do not have the profit margins their trucks do. How does the dealership increase volume and profit on their SUV sales at the same time? We're looking at a couple different strategies here. We're looking at developing a marketing strategy that includes audience targeting and creative efforts, and an operations strategy that includes processes and training efforts. So guys, I'll go ahead and start the clock. You have 5 minutes to put down your notes, and then we will discuss as a team. I think there's a lot of domestic manufacturers out there that are looking at this and having a very, very, very similar scenario where their sales were probably 65%, if not maybe in some cases more than that in truck sales. And, you know, looking at what kind of global manufacturers are saying right now, we don't necessarily anticipate, you know, truck sales or truck inventory really kind of balance out until maybe middle or even towards the end of this year. And we are going to have to find and increase our revenue in the SUVs that we do have. So let's, I'm going to start with you, Marco, on your side, and then we're going to work our way over here. You know, how does a dealership increase both volume and profit at the exact time in their SUV sales? Let's start with the marketing strategy, audience targeting, and then creative efforts. What are your thoughts?
So marketing strategy, it's tough to convert somebody unless they're in front of you to change their mind on something as epic as going from a pickup truck to an SUV now or a car. It's doable, but it all starts with training the staff. I believe that's a pillar of being able to do that. And by training the staff is training them how to qualify the client properly, in the sense of, you know, ask the client whether or not they really need that truck bed, and how often they need that truck bed. It's just like when somebody comes in asking for a 7-passenger vehicle because their in-laws come to town 3 times a year. And you've got to make them realize that for the times that you need that truck bed or the time you need that 7-seater, it's cheaper to rent one from Home Depot or Enterprise for $35, $45 a day than it is to purchase one and commit to it for 3 or 4 years, and then find out halfway through that you needed more enclosed cargo space versus open cargo space. And then the increasing profitability, that's a simple one. F&I products, warranties, rust proofing if it's available, tire rim protection. Those are all simple things that the salespeople can set up the client for early on in the process, while at the same time offering some value to the client. So it's not an administration fee that you try to explain and where does it go, pays for the computers and the wires. It just doesn't make sense and people don't buy into it. But if you set them up properly for a warranty, then, you know, that's a way to increase profit.
Now, on that marketing kind of strategy, messaging, you know, kind of split it out between, you know, kind of a new customer versus existing customer. What kind of messaging would you put in there, Marco?
New customer versus existing customer. Ask them what they didn't like about owning a truck versus what they liked. There is going to be pros and cons with both of those things, and then kind of shine a light conveniently to what, you know, it is convenient to you. For example, with a pickup truck. Having grown up around them, it's, you know, stuff freezes in the back. You need to buy a cover. Covers are between $300 for a crappy one to $1,600. It's something else you have to account for when buying that car or that truck. And just kind of steer the conversation where you want it to go.
Sure. Hey, Jeff, for yourself, from a marketing strategy, kind of targeting that SUV buyer, what kind of messaging, knowing that they would like to buy a truck, but you don't have it. What kind of messaging would you put together there?
Well, I think from a marketing standpoint, one of the first things we're talking about targeting is literally geo-targeting and marketing to areas where that families are going to be, whether it be the rink, whether it be, maybe it's not as much now, but trying to focus to areas where you think that there's going to have those type of SUV customers if we're talking about, new or even potential changeover customers. I would focus a lot on lease options. So somebody's truck might be at at its tail end, and so they're kind of in an area where they do need a vehicle. It doesn't necessarily have to be a truck, or they might want a specific one that you can't get.
Oh, I like that, kind of like their in-between vehicle. Like, we don't have a truck right now, but we'll get you an SUV
so we can
when
do
you
it,
can't get a
right
truck.
now, General Motors, where I am, we have really great leases, really great lease incentives right now,
Yeah.
and they're really focusing on short-term leases, so 2-year leases, right, are very affordable. And I think that if we can, kind of get somebody into one of those in a 2-year lease and saying, okay, 2 years, let's get into this. The cost of ownership is pretty minimal, and then we'll get you into the one that you really want, because we don't have that lifted AT4 that you want right now. But in 2 years, I'm pretty sure we'll be back to more of a normal circumstance, because General Motors is going to be building trucks in Canada now. So I think that if we can focus on maybe some short-term leases,
I like that. I like that. I like that kind of short-term kind of.
I think also focusing on re-educating customers as well, because I think a lot of our SUVs are very capable in towing, and I think if we do a lot of videos showing them towing boats, showing them towing a small traveler trailer, and then fortunately again with General Motors, we have Yukons, we have Taos, we have some of the larger ones, but even some of our mid-sized ones will pull 5,500 pounds, and a lot of people aren't educated in that. They just think if you're getting an SUV, you might be able to pull a single bed snowmobile trailer, and that might be the extent of it. So I think just it's a re-education of the customer and what the capabilities of the new SUVs are. And I think one other thing in terms of when you're talking about more profit would be to market these SUVs with something, again, maybe I'm lending myself more towards where I live, but with snow tire packages and things like that, where people that are coming from a truck might be a little more nervous because they just assume a truck is going to go through that snow and get to a conference like this when there's a snowstorm better. But if you educate them that, hey, listen, these snow tires are a great thing, and you're packaging that as part of your pricing, aside from obviously what Marco said, which is clearly just back end in terms of warranties and tire warranties and protection packages. So,
John, for yourself, I know a lot of your dealerships are great at selling SUVs. So I'm curious, from a kind of a marketing strategy, what approach would you kind of take in this specific scenario?
The guys mentioned a couple things already, but we would probably target this as a 3-prong where, we'd have a heavy, or target our database, right? So, you can pull the data from there and really focus on which customers you think would work going into an SUV, obviously previous SUV customers, but also you can look at some of the history of someone that was in a truck maybe and how they financed and whatnot to target them. If you're a manufacturer store, you have service customers coming in every day, and actually service is up right now, right? So, most dealerships through the pandemic had better fixed operations, so I would really tie that into my marketing platform and making sure I have a really good process on how we're communicating with the people that are coming in for service, and maybe we're doing some test drives on SUVs and stuff like that, and have them set up in the showroom and whatnot. And then obviously there'd have to be a really good social media presence, so I wrote that down, and targeting all platforms, with some good creativity and what the benefits of SUVs are. And then for profitability, the guys have already mentioned it, just making sure that our after-sale products are part of the sales process, right? So, winter tires should be part of a sales process, and including them into that sales process, especially with the manufacturers having 0%, right? So, a lot of people might not know that a winter tires might only change the payment, $6 or $7, right? So, you start serving numbers that include the winter tires, even if they didn't ask them, and say with tires or with a tire package or without tires. And then once they see that there's only a small spread, they start buying some of these after-sale products right up front before they go into the finance office, right? So that would kind of be my prong system there.
I like that. I think I'd kind of, I almost kind of like also a combination, kind of what Jeff was talking to. I'm thinking like a lifestyle type kind of accessory packages. You know, I will have to say, you know, the States does a lot better of accessorizing vehicles than I think a majority of kind of Canadian automotive industry. But that was a big part of my success when I had a dealership. Was a lot of my profit margins honestly came from the accessories, because necessarily the car wasn't going to get me to where my goals needed to be. And so how you kind of create those lifestyle accessory packages, like if you are a family, here's a lifestyle package. You know, if you are an active person, you go out, here's another accessory package. Everold, for yourself, you know, when you're thinking kind of, you know, the situation this ABC Motors is in, you know, from a marketing perspective, kind of, you know, who would you target and what does that creative effort kind of look like?
Well, I think my first target would be intentionally targeting my existing database, and it's largely what I do at Lexus anyways, because there's so much more there than meets the eye. There's so much more in our existing database, and I believe that that's the foundation from which to build and to strategize, especially when you have a circumstance where there's not enough trucks and you need to shift your focus to another model. I've, you know, to borrow a little bit of what Jeff shared with us, I intentionally always, especially if a truck is up for redesign in the next year or so, that's one reason to, you know, offer a temporary or a short-term lease scenario. And that's something that we do a lot, because customers like the fact that you are outlining a solution for them, that in order to get to point B, you might need to take a detour. But the possibilities that we can get you there, here's just why, and here's just how we need to do it. And I think that has opened up a lot of opportunities for us at Lexus, because sometimes clients really, when they tell you they're looking for this pickup truck and you really have a conversation and listen to them, they probably really don't need the pickup truck. They just like having the pickup truck, right? Because they like the big wheels, 22-inch wheels like Jeff, and they like, you know, that they have more horsepower than their friends or neighbors, and they like when they go to the cottage, they can plow through, you know, to get up and to pick up their stuff. It's no different than our clients who are hauling stuff between, you know, Toronto and Florida. How much SUV do they need to haul their stuff back every year? You know, it's the same thing. So definitely intentionally targeting, shifting focus to short, and you know, there's many clients we've done this with even recently. A guy wants a Tesla, well, he wants a Lexus electric car, but we don't have one yet. Well, why don't you lease a hybrid until we get to that point? So it's kind of the same thing, is offering alternatives.
Kind of finding alternatives. Look, I think everyone's kind of really kind of consistent. Kind of the audience targeting is how do you kind of separate out, you know, your existing customer database between like the real truck user who does need it because it's work based and they are towing on a regular basis, and then that's, I'm gonna call it the convenient truck owner who likes the idea of owning one because, you know, they go to Home Depot, it makes it easy, but it's not necessarily a requirement. I think that would be an incredibly powerful strategy, I think, for this type of dealership, but I'm not 100% sure exactly how to execute on that. So I'm going to start with Marco and I'm working my way around. How would you think that ABC Motors can kind of separate out from their existing customer database the real truck owners kind of versus the convenient truck owners, so we can have these two different conversations?
Well, it all depends. I mean, really what it comes down to when it comes to trucks, I like to bring up the example of Ford, because Ford pickup trucks, for example, are not usually driven by people that actually do much work, unless they have the proper engine and the proper towing equipment and what's not. But an EcoBoost engine is not going to haul a Bobcat or whatever else that you need to haul with it, right? So there's a lot of, I call them four-man trucks. And if you're targeting your own database, that's the easiest thing, because you've seen these cars come back and you've seen the condition, you've seen whether or not the bed's completely demolished in the back, because they keep throwing, the example of my family, marble and granite in the back of it, and it just destroys the bed. The seats, the way they break down on the side of the fabric, that's a big thing that I've noticed on pickup trucks is, if it's somebody that does actual work, they don't wear dress pants, they wear Dickies and jeans, and those tend to demolish, eat away at the seat as you go along. So it's fairly easy once you have the truck in front of you to tell who's doing what, but if you want to go in depth without looking at the truck, look at who owns the truck. If it's a construction company, they're going to put it under a company. If it's a renovator, a plumber, it's going to most likely be under a company name rather than a personal name. Look at the mileage that they're driving, higher mileage. So you can pretty much narrow it down, not perfectly, but to a pretty good understanding on who the clients are that actually use the truck for work versus who doesn't use the truck for work. And anybody that's putting leather navigation sunroof in a pickup truck, they're also most likely, and again, probably Jeff can confirm that, but I think, in my eyes, somebody who's getting a leather sunroof, 22-inch wheels, no towing package, it's not somebody who's going to most likely do any work with the truck.
He owns the construction company.
He owns a construction company,
He owns the
correct?
construction
Yeah.
company.
And that's an easy flip. So
Yeah.
somebody that owned the construction company, I would probably show them an Escalade at that point. But yeah, that's the way I would do it. Base model, the workers truck, the city trucks, if you look at them, they all tend to be whatever color you got in stock, least amount of options, needs to have a towing package, right? So
Jeff,
that's
for yourself, how would you try to separate out the real truck owners from the convenient truck
So,
owners?
yeah, so I think Marco obviously spoke to the fact if he's digging into, what's already there. I'm going to get my customer in one way or the other regardless. So I don't really want to qualify too much. I just want to get them in there. And I know it sounds silly, but it's more of a better opportunity when we are face to face.
Oh, no,
we
it's
have
true.
different
We
product
have
there,
him
which
through the door.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
he's not saying that. But so I have written here with a couple exclamation points after is pre-qualifying questions, right? Which we should be doing regardless, and focusing on. So I'll admit I'm guilty of this. There's numerous truck customers that I absolutely know don't need trucks. They wanted the truck, and I'm not going to discourage them from wanting that. I don't think I'm doing them a disservice. You know what I mean? I think that's what they want. It's still doing everything they need to do. They're still going to fit the kids in the back and go to hockey.
That's a path of least resistance, right? Let's just get them to
100%,
what they're
right?
looking
But I think in this case now, those customers are back. I can dig deeper on the pre-qualifying questions and is this what do you really need this? Like, what is it you're towing? Well, did you know that the Traverse can pull this much? And so I can probably weed out very easily a lot of those customers and hopefully steer them in a different direction and then at that point use the shorter term lease. Well, you know what? Listen. I think this is a good thing for you to try out, and see how that goes. And if not, it's only a 2-year lease. Then we're back into a truck anyways, right? And I think right now, one thing I forgot to mention, I just want to go back to quickly, and I had at the top of the page, going back to the marketing, but it can also in relation to this, is right now, I think a lot of us are fortunate because, we are still working, but I was off for a few months myself and I'm sure a lot of people may still be off or making less of an income. I think one of the things we should really speak to is the cost of ownership of these vehicles as well. Aside from the diesel that Marco may be driving, most of these trucks are much harder on fuel. Most of these trucks are more expensive at a retail price. Therefore, your payments are higher. And I think if we can focus on, again, going back to maybe that short-term lease and talking about the vehicle cost of ownership being less, your fuel efficiency is better. Your cost of ownership for a short term until the world hopefully rights itself, and maybe use. It sounds bad, but maybe use that to our favor right now in realizing that not everybody's in that same boat. Not everybody has been working right through this pandemic and has the normal funds that they normally do, or may be nervous about what may be to come. So
Yeah, a little of a pinching of the wallet message. John, what would you like to add to kind of that strategy?
I mean, they said it well. I mean, value selling, right? So I mean, the reality is you can get more of an SUV, than you could in a truck, right? So in most cases, or the other side of that would be is that you can lower the price. So, and they can get in, so now they can look at their life and their cost outlet and still get in a new vehicle, but maybe the payments drop some. So I mean, but all the points were valid. So
Yeah, it's as an industry, we focus so much on the upgrade events. I can't think of a single manufacturer or dealership that hasn't run one. It's like almost we're talking about like a downgrade event, and it's like, how do you kind of get that message out there? Everold, anything that you'd like to kind of add to how you kind of separate out, those audiences?
Well, I think for the work truck or the avid work truck user, they will clearly define more the purpose of the truck. They would either have the towing package already on, the bed liner. There's probably going to be work equipment in the truck, in the bed. They'll probably be dressed in their work clothes, as they usually are, and they're more definitive on what they need. They know exactly what they need. No different than, our SUVs. If someone says, "Well, I need a towing package because," and I know, I need a roof rack or a crossbar because I go skiing. So I think the work truck person would have that defined, and then for the non work truck or pickup truck buyer, I think they may just be doing it because of convenience and less definitive as to the overall use, but have always liked a pickup truck, have seen them on the road. The deals are good, and there's that too that drives a lot of these buyers to buying pickup trucks and bigger vehicles lately, is because the deals have been so good. And I think and if they've always wanted one all their growing up, or admired a pickup truck, they look so nice now, and like you say, they are a family vehicle, most of them now. So that sometimes that steers them.
I think you're right. And I think on the new customer kind of side is, I think I'd have a little fun, a little tongue in cheek with the messaging and the marketing here of, do you really need a truck? I think that would be a lot of fun. Now, what we're talking about kind of in general, it seems like we're all in agreement that there has to be a conversation. Here's the kicker with that conversation is like, how do we process out, and this goes in kind of into our next part, which is the operation strategy of it. How do we process out the conversation that, the customer sees value in having that conversation with us? Because we know that we can provide value once we get the information, but how do we show value right out of the gate? Everold, I'll start with you, and I'll kind of work my way around this time. I want to have that conversation with them. What's kind of that process?
On how to show value?
Well, I want to get them to give me the time to have that kind of conversation. How do I earn that time?
Well, I think you earn the time first by establishing initial common ground, and to show interest in what they're, what brought them in. I think if you show a genuine interest and have that dialogue, people then open up more to what really brought them in, whether it's something they saw and they start telling you the stories about who has one or why they wanted one, and that gives you the tools you need to develop a value strategy and to make various types of proposals or suggestions, and take the conversation from there to build your value proposition for that client.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I really like that. John, I'm sure you'd probably have some kind of add to that. Like, how do we bring that customer into the dealership from a prospect's perspective, to give us that 15 minutes so we can have that conversation?
Well, there's no easy answer, but I mean, customer profiling and using the data that we have would have to come into play, and making sure that you have a strategy by going through, any customer that's been a customer of yours already. You should be able to properly pull the data, and I think that's sometimes what we miss. We don't do deep dive on the customer and making sure we understand, how many vehicles in their household, how did they pay for it last year, how many kids do they have, all those hot buttons that are going to help make the decision making. So, we have all that data. So using the data to, when we do approach them and start communicating with them, giving them reasons to have a look at, what an SUV might change or help them, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think that's a really kind of a professional way to kind of approach the customer, is that, hey, based on the data that we have, and of you interacting with us over the years, I think we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just got to come out and say, we don't have trucks to sell right now, so we want to show you the value in an SUV, and you could lower your payment by $100, and you could get an upgraded unit. I mean, sometimes it's just, you just tell them what you have to offer that's more appealing than what maybe that you had before, right? So, and once you explain it to them and say, hey, I know you had a truck last time, we don't have trucks, so, like the guys said, we'll put you in one of these short term, but here's the benefits to it, right?
It's a really good strategy, great communication there. Jeff, for yourself, like, is this a phone call or is this an email? Like, how do you get them? How do you get them started to want to have that conversation?
I think obviously phone call. I mean, emails don't get answered anywhere near as much as one would think, or I think it's changed anyways for sure. But I think for me, it'd be picking up the phone. I think it would just be a matter of literally for myself and my sales process would just be talking to the customer. Maybe, a lot of my truck buyers, up until recently where we've put in a lot more focus on leasing of trucks, but a lot of my truck buyers were buying trucks because they're using them, like, right? Some of them were using them. So I think what I would do is call the customer and kind of just find out what's going on with them. Hey, we haven't talked for a while, what's going on? One thing I've really noticed recently is amalgamated families. So a lot of people are having separated. They have 2 children of their own. They're getting that together with somebody that just 2 months ago that now has 2 children or 3 children. Now they have 5 children. You know what I mean? So they're the kind of customer who has had a truck. They're only, so you can find out different things about them. It's showing you care for as well. You're finding information about them that we can. Well, you know what? Maybe we should get out of that truck and get an SUV. You need more. You need more space, right? And I think also this sounds really bad the way I say it maybe, but from a bait and switch standpoint, we still do have some trucks, right?
Sure.
We just may not have that truck that person is dreaming about. So we can still bring that person, I can still bring that person in to have a look at trucks. And we may have the one they want. Great, I'm gonna sell that one. If we don't, then I have the ability to speak to the things that we've already spoken about because I have my customer there and go, you know what, we don't really have what you want. I keep going back to this lease thing, but I'm just saying, that once I have them there and I can show that here's really where we're at. It's not you're on the lot with me right now. You can see that we don't have very many. I know you're in need of a new vehicle. Yours is up for the end of its warranty, right? Let's not start, dumping money at something when I can put that money towards, a new vehicle for a shorter term, and then we can get you into exactly what you want. Or you may find that this is going to work best for you, and let's save some money in the middle of that. So. I think again, I don't want to have bait and switch as a thing, but it's a little bit of that is bringing the customer in, and if I don't, at least because I do have some inventory to show them, and if it's not what they want, we can really start focusing on the SUVs in the ways that we've already spoken about.
I think just to add to that, it's different. There's a different approach whether we're dealing with our existing database or we're dealing with a new customer coming in.
Absolutely.
Because we've established a lot of trust with our existing database, and I know we've done this many times at Lexus where we're waiting for a car that won't be coming for a year or 2, or they're redesigning something that we know of and are honest enough, and they know anyways because they're educated enough to know, and we'll give them a temporary solution. It's the good thing that I think a lot of us are identifying in sales and in management is we can actually set up a lot of our next deals. And largely what I teach and my success has been on the fact that the deal I do today in 2021 or 2020, I've already set up the scenario for 2022. My client knows it, I know it, they know the expectation.
I like that process. That's cool.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so when I sell or deliver 170 cars a year, I'm actually doing it to 140 people. I don't need to see 170 because the expectations, and they like it. The thing about the systems that I've been fortunate to create, which speaks to this point, is that we've trained our clients, we've conditioned them rather, to wanting these new vehicles every 2 years and 3 years. And that they actually now like that process. Yeah.
Marco, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the awkward conversation. 3 years ago, you told me the SUVs were the best thing. Now you have too many pickup trucks.
I was already thinking that, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's really what it the way I would personally approach it is especially if they're on the phone or in front of you, you can turn around and say, listen, like, look at all the pickup trucks that are available out there. Every company carries usually 2, whether it's a Colorado or a Silverado or a Ford F-150 versus a Ranger, versus how many SUVs are being added to every manufacturer's line, to the point where they're chewing up the sedan segment of the market, right? So ultimately, you get the clients in, you put them in the SUV, and you ask them the main difference. You're still sitting as high. So you can still see ahead. The only difference is that when you look back, there isn't a -40 bed sitting behind you. There is extra cargo space where you can store stuff or put people and so forth. So
really kind of build out the benefits. Guys, I know this has been some great strategies to kind of, acquire people in both from the new side, the existing side. Now I think I'm going to kind of lean more towards on kind of the process and training, because not only do we have to increase the volume here, we also got to increase the profit. And you guys have said a few things, and I want to elaborate a lot more on it. Marco, you actually started with this, is on the F&I side, which for me personally, I think process and training is practically broken when it comes to F&I. So let's dive into this, guys. Like I said, we're going to increase the volume, but we're going to increase the profitability. Marco, from a process and training perspective, what would you like to see when it comes to F&I?
oh boy, F&I has been it's a straw house on fire constantly because you look at all the different dealer groups, and there's some that are getting rid of it, making the sales guys do it. That, in my opinion, that doesn't really work, because by the time you're done closing a deal, the last thing you want to do is sell them products most of the times. And then there's other dealerships that are hiring more F&I, other that are just keeping two. It's just that everybody's just doing their own thing when it comes to financial services office. But making the salespeople realize that there's an opportunity, whether it's through their pay plan or keeping their clients happy, or a combination of both. What it comes down to is I looked at our number one seller, Audi, for example, was a Q3. The Q3 doesn't have a great profit margin, but by the time you take a discount off of it, because somebody else gave them cost, whatever the case might be, you're at a flat deal. So how do I make my $300 flat a $500 flat or a $400 flat? And the easy transition was to set up the F&I office from the moment you qualify the clients to when you close the deal, so that you put the breadcrumbs down, and then the F&I manager can now do his job a lot easier. So that's one thing. And how do you get the salespeople to buy into that? I bought into it when I got sent out to do an F&I training course with First Canadian. And that's when I started looking into it. And then it went to confirm everything when I sat through a couple of TOs, and watched them create a connection within 30 seconds almost, and build the products that they needed to build. And then the thing that teed it all off was looking at the average RO from the service department. So the repairers that service departments do on a lower end dealerships like a Nissan or a Honda, you're looking at an average of about $1,000 to $1,500 when they come into your service department. And the clients begrudgingly pay that, but that doesn't mean that they're happy about it. So you'll never have a client come back to you and say, "You sold me that warranty, it saved me $5,000, you son of a gun." No, they're happy to do it, right? So,
Jeff, for yourself, how would you like to see the F&I process at ABC Motors be set up here, with the intention of not only increasing our volume but our profit as well?
So I agree with Marco 99.9% of the time, but and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm of the thought of the way things have been going recently, that I like the idea of a salesperson being able to carry the whole process all the way through. And if I can explain why, I think it's one of the things that I notice in my sales process in the dealership that I work at is, they'll see me, right? And we spend a number of time, and I've established that rapport with that customer. Then they're going to go see an F&I person. Or in some cases, it's the salesperson, then the manager does the deal, then it's the F&I person, then it's the delivery person. And we have all of these channels, and they're meeting somebody, you know what I mean? And I think some things are getting lost in translation. And I think sometimes it's easier to sell a product to somebody when you've already developed that relationship, as opposed to just sticking them up in a back office with a finance manager who they haven't spoken one word to, and he's immediately trying to sell them an intangible. Right, so a product that they don't even get, you don't even see it, right?
Yep.
And so again, I think there's pluses and minuses to both. I'm not saying that is I just, as a salesperson, selfishly, I think that would be a great way to do it. And in my dealership, I'm selling the warranty anyway. So in that particular case, I also think, in terms of strategy and how in F&I, I think that there should be more ways to incentivize your salespeople to set them up, if they're not selling that warranty first, to set up the office better. Unfortunately, I'm a salesman, and I think most salespeople in here will agree. Like money talks. Like, we're here to make money. We're on commission, right? And I think a lot of times, if I'm making more money, I'm more incentivized to do that, to speak to the F&I, right? So I think that you need your sales department either to be able to do that, or to be able to be incentivized a little bit, get a portion of that to set up the F&I office to hit it out of the park.
That's awesome. John, I know that this has been I'm sure a conversation you've had multiple times among your managers and teams. And for ABC Motors here, knowing what you know about them and that their need to increase both volume and profitability, how would you kind of recommend them structuring out their F&I process and efforts?
Well, the salespeople need to be incentivized on the products that are sold in the F&I department. But once you go from selling the vehicle to now selling the protection on the vehicle or the loan and everything else, I strongly believe that it needs to be someone else, right? So just transferring the trust over to that person and advising them on that part of the process is good. We do have a second phase system even in the finance office, where if that finance manager is going to go to a director at the end of it, and which products they bought or which they didn't, and at that point the director may go in and get a second phase and discount it, and show them the value and stuff like that. So we have really high penetrations based on this system, right? So Brandon, my son, heads it up, and we're looking at each finance manager, just like salespeople are going to have things. They're going to have their go-to products, right? For sure. And then they're going to have the ones that they're not good at. So it's just identifying those and then making sure that we have the proper, scheduling and training and reviews of the ones they're not good at. Like a lot of finance offices hardly sell any life and disability anymore, and usually it's because they're not even pitching it during the credit applications, right? And so it's just, if someone has zero penetration on something, generally it's because they're not even pitching it, right? So it's just making sure that you're reviewing those things, right? So, but, to reiterate what Jeff is, there has to be incentivized for the salesman to set it up and plant the seeds on those products and whatnot. So we make sure that, they're part of the process on that as well.
Everold, anything you'd kind of like to add to that? Like, how would you like to see this dealership set up that F&I process?
So I go back to what clients are actually looking for, and what I've learned and researched a lot over the last 9 years since returning to the retail space is clients are shopping for value in a big way. But how does that get broken down? Convenience, authenticity, and value. So if I, as a sales rep, I'm able to, for example, I average $2,900 going into the business office going into the business office with products already sold. I sell the ECP coverage because it has maintenance, and I sell tint and stone guard because those I think are relatively easy and justifiable. The thing that the clients now become conditioned to is the convenience and the value of the service plan that I've built in, because they've now gone to the service department, don't have to get their wallets out too often, and they like that. So when it comes time to setting up the new deal or upgrading them or trade, they kind of now expect that. So you've also sold the other ECP the second time and sold the products. And so some salespeople, like John said, will have some go-to products that they're good at selling and justifying. And then maybe if they go into the business office, then there can be some other items that are necessary. But I also think it's crucial to have a balance, not to oversell clients things that they may not ever use or need, because I think you're shooting yourself in the foot short term, whereas I believe it's fundamentally important for long-term profitability to set up the deal right the first time so that when they come back, I don't ask my clients to sell the ECP the second time. As a matter of fact, most of the deals that we do, we structure the deal, including the finance items, and I say, this is how I've structured the deal for you. And most clients will not even ask.
So you kind of have a hybrid between kind of what Jeff and Marco and kind of John was talking about, where it's like you will do some of the selling of the product during the sale, and then there is a second person touch that will kind of go over some additional things. Now I think what it is for the pinpoint or the pain point I see in kind of what we're talking about here, and John, you said it so elegantly, is the transfer of trust. I think that's, to me, when I think of kind of the F&I and that two-person approach, that always seems to be this total breakdown, is this transfer of trust. So Mark, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to work my way around, is kind of, what is a better process or what should that better process look like for this ABC Motors who's trying to increase their profitability, to transfer that trust, from salesperson to F&I manager?
So, well, I can speak from my experience, but what I personally find comfortable doing is when we're discussing payments with the client, and I know I'm going to have to give up some of the profit margin to keep the deal together or put the deal together. And if I know that there is money down, so I'll use those as my benefit, as my seeds for the F&I office. I will tell them, listen, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try and get you this $1,000 off the vehicle, which is great because you can then put that money towards a warranty and what's not. Or, well, we want to put $2,000 or $5,000 down. Everybody knows that anything below $10,000, it's not going to impact the payments a great amount. So most people will say 2,000 or between 2 and 5. So I tell them, don't put that money down. The interest rates are low. Keep the money in the back pocket. Invest it in something that's going to protect the vehicle, like a warranty or whatever else that I feel like setting up that I know is going to benefit them. And then in terms of transfer of trust, when I introduce them to the finance manager, the line never changes. Like, this is my good friend Adam. He helps out all my clients, and I've explained to him the products that we discussed at the desk, and he's going to go over them in detail with you. So I don't give enough information to be able for them to make the decision, because I don't want to get into the specific of what the warranty covers, the deductibles, blah, blah, blah. That's his job. But in terms of introducing them, that's a key point. And this is Adam, he's going to do your paperwork. Like, that doesn't work. Or he's going to do your credit application, or, I think that 2-minute drill is important, and then that wording on how you introduce the finance manager is crucial.
I agree. Jeff, for yourself, I think transferring a trust, like, I get what you're saying, man. When I was a salesperson, like, I honestly didn't want anybody else talking to my customer. I spent so much time building the rapport with this person. I knew everything about them and their family, and I just knew that, I guess what it was for me is I wasn't necessarily confident that someone else could serve this customer better than I could, and I struggled with that. I really did. So I get where you're at, but how would you like to see, all right, that transfer of trust, work, where you felt comfortable that next person was going to serve your customer in a good way?
Yeah, so one thing I guess I probably should clarify in what I said previously is I don't necessarily think it works for every dealer. I think in maybe dealerships where it's a smaller dealership like myself, and we're not doing the volume that maybe some dealers are on pure numbers, when we have the time to focus on that more, to do more training, and I think that's where it makes a bit more sense than some. But as far as the transferring, I actually sometimes bring up my business manager in the conversation. About like when we go back there, or and kind of already introduce what's going to be happening before it happens. I also oftentimes will, when I go back to my business manager before I bring the customers back, I think it's somewhat similar to Mark was saying, is it's from a discount perspective. I know that I've got $500 extra bucks or $1,000 extra dollars that I haven't given off, and I can work with my business manager and say, hey, listen, this person's going to be on the fence with their life insurance, probably, I can tell, or whatever it may be. And listen, why don't we can get together and use, you can earn some trust with them by giving them a better discount on something, but we're taking that out of the end that I have, because I have some good gross left in the vehicle. And then actually what I do is I try and make it as lighthearted as possible, because I feel like in a lot of people's cases that they get nervous, like, where am I going now? I'm heading to this back office. Like, and the way our dealership's set up, you go around and it's in a back office, right? There's no windows there other than the window out of their office, but it's in a hallway. And so I think for me, it's kind of, I try to lighten the mood, and I joke around, and I'm like, he's going to ask you all the fun questions, or you know what I mean? And then I also, obviously in a serious way, let them know what's happening, but I think I kind of just joke around and I make a joke. And a lot of times I find out, obviously in my pre-qualifying, things that the customers like or what they do. And I know my business managers very well. We have 2 of them. I've been working with them both for 8 years, so I know what they're both into. So sometimes I also gear my customer towards which finance manager I think that they're going to get along better with, because one's a younger guy, one's an older guy. One likes hunting and fishing, one likes playing darts, whatever it is. And if I know, or sometimes I can also gather, what area of town they lived in. Like, Sault Ste. Marie is not that big. So I knew this guy, I knew that was finance manager grew up on St. Joe's Island, which is a half an hour away, and this guy lived right in town on the west. So like, I'm already always thinking about who my business manager, provided they're both there at that time, who I'm going to bring them to. And that also lowers the comfort level, because they're right off the bat. And sometimes I actually say this, like, oh, I'm introducing my finance manager to the customer and say, here's Steve, here's Brian, and did you know Steve just bought a Harley? Why don't you tell him about yours? You know what I mean? And so before they even start talking about anything, they're already talking about a common ground, and that's my way of trying to bring that down a little bit.
That's cool. John, I know you have a lot of staff, so you've seen really good transfers, and you've probably seen some really bad transfers. Kind of your thoughts on the transfer of that trust.
Well, the turnover has to be, really scripted and really done well, right? So, I mean, that's where I think a lot of dealerships may miss it, is who's turning them over to the finance office, what is he going to say, or her. And so we make sure, in an ideal world, the manager is going to go grab the customer because he's been involved in the process, and he's going to say, hey, I'm going to go, come with me, I'm going to take you in to meet, our business manager, and then he's going to go in and introduce the customers to the manager and say, hey, listen, this is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They went ahead and bought a brand new Santa Fe. This is what they've agreed to. So, all the I's and T's are done on that. And then the manager, I'm going to say, hey, listen, this is Everold. He's our finance manager, he's your business manager. He's been with us 7-8 years. He's going to go ahead and explain, all the protections on both the car and the finance and your on your loan and all the options that you're entitled to. I'm going to see you guys both in about 10-15 minutes, and before you leave, and just make it really friendly, and then just kind of take that ease off a little bit. But set the stage for what's going to happen, right? So, I mean, when people don't know what to expect, they expect the worst. So we want to make sure that our managers are taking that customer into the finance office and then doing the proper introduction. And then the other part that is missed is also making sure that both the salesman, the sales manager, and the finance manager have done a proper turnover before they brought in the customer. Because that one's a big one too, where, hey, this is, this getting the information from the salesman and saying, hey, tell us a little bit about this, what happened, how is Everold going to be able to do with this customer, any buttons that you can help us with here on what we should know about these customers, and just making sure that part has happened before the customers are getting turned over would be a big one as well.
That's a great point. We are not allowed to just bring our customer back to the business office. We go back there and speak to them thoroughly before that customer comes back, so they're educated in what's happening.
You gotta have that little power. You
point.
gotta have that time to kind of chat. I think consistency in the process is major when you're trying to develop Outlook. Like, whatever the process is going to be, it's never going to be the first version of that process. You may have 8, 9, 10 different variations of it to meet to that profitability that this dealership is looking for. But documenting that and then consistently executing it so you can measure the effectiveness, and then being willing to pivot fast if it's not getting to you. I think that's key. That's great, guys. Everold, anything you'd like to add before we kind of finish off here when it comes to that F&I trust?
I think it comes a lot down to building trust. Comes a lot down to communication, and I think it's great, especially if you deal with multi-time repeat client a bit differently than a new client. But the communication between, even though my business manager is in the very next office to me, I do go in and brief them on the summary of the deal and the expectations and what I've covered and what potentially they may be interested in over and above what I've done, and to set the stage. And I think setting the stage is really critical to avoid any hiccups. And, knock wood, I must say, in 9 years, I've only had one client, and it really annoyed the hell out of me, blew up in the business office, because communications is important, and that transfer is key.
That's awesome, guys. Hey, I think these are some really solid strategies that we've kind of developed here for this particular dealership. Look, I know there's a lot of dealerships out there right now that are struggling with this as well. They're, as far as inventory levels go, maybe they were very heavy in trucks, and now they're having to shift and move to another vehicle lineup. I think we've come up with some pretty cool, creative marketing strategies of, from an existing customer, of how we identify both real truck owners versus just convenient truck owners, and what's the messaging that differs from them, instead of maybe doing an upgrade, maybe there's a downgrade conversation, and then getting deep into the process of how we kind of increase the profitability. I think you guys knocked it out of the park here. I mean, it comes down to kind of F&I and accessories, especially on the F&I side. If we're going to successfully transfer that trust that we developed in the sales department over to the F&I department, we have to set that stage, and we got to document that process and consistently execute that process so we can measure its effectiveness. Guys, thank you so much. These have been some great strategies. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.